Welcome into a crossover episode here on the Patriots Press Pass channel. Patriots Beat, Patriots Daily coming at you here to kind of take stock of things after 3 weeks of the Patriots season and look ahead. So we've got I'm Alex Barth, Brian Hines of Patriots Speak, Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles, Patriots Daily with us as well. And we both did our game recap shows. You can check those out on the channel. So this won't be as much about the Jets game as it will be kind of where things stand through 3 weeks. I will say this, though. I would expect the Jets game to feature heavily because I think that kind of resets where this team is at. And that gets to my big umbrella take. Regardless of what happened on Thursday night, I still think the first 2 games were encouraging. Like, that's true. That doesn't change. To me, what Thursday night was a smack in the face reminder of why those games were encouraging, even though the team didn't look great, because you saw all the questions and concerns and doubts about this team basically front and center in your face for 60 minutes. Do I think every game is going to be like that Jets game? No. Do I think there could be more like that game? Yes. It kind of reminds me of that Eagles practice and what I said coming away from next. Remember, it was dark after that Eagles practice. People were in a bad way, especially coming away from a practice. And I kind of try to characterize it as, I don't think the team will be that consistently, but the fact that that's the floor is a little jarring. The fact that can be done to them. And I kind of look at this game the same way. I don't think that's necessarily who they are when water finds its level, but they can be brought to that point. And to me, that game, more than anything else, is a reminder, as good as it felt the first 2 weeks, of just how much work ahead there is for Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf, and the rest of the staffers in that building, both on the coaching staff and in the front office. Brian, we'll start with you. Just kind of your thoughts as to where the Patriots are at through 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think the first 2 games are probably more of what you'll see going forward, right? I do think maybe that Thursday night game, I saw a stat. I think there were 17 or 18 times where a team has played overtime the week before, and then they had to go play Thursday night football, and they're like 2-16. So it was a tough situation. Like, you're going on the road, and Aaron Rodgers' home debut this season, right? And really his home debut for the Jets. Like, you lose Juwan Bentley, your captain. So it was a tough situation. And you could see that. Like, I think a couple of guys said their energy levels were low, but you do get a reminder that at the end of the day, like, this team isn't the most talented in football. Their roster talent is near the bottom. So those games can happen. But I think moving forward, like, if you can control the trenches, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the offensive line that Mayo keeps, saying they like to do, like, I think you'll see more games and more competitive games like you did week 1 and 2 moving forward.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of already seen the ceiling for this team so far this season and the floor for them so far. And I think the way they played against Cincinnati in week 1, where they didn't commit a lot of penalties, they didn't have a ton of mistakes, they protected the football, they were able to win a close game against a good football team. And then last week, it unraveled on them with the missed tackles and the lack of protection and missing wide open throws when you finally have protection and things like that. And it got ugly pretty quickly. And Brian makes a good point where they did just play overtime, and they did now have to kind of switch it over quickly on a short week. And this whole take them to the hill thing that we talked about 2 weeks, or the first week, really kind of caught up to them the last 2 weeks, where they're playing these late games. And yes, they're conditioned, but you can only be so conditioned as a football team, and sometimes it's just going to wear on you. And so Gerard Mayo even said it after both games, where down the stretch, their conditioning caught up to them a little bit, and they seem to kind of to wear down. And so now, how do you bounce back is the big question. You did just get embarrassed on primetime football. Now you go into a game against a really good football team in San Francisco, who is also 1-2 for some reason. Now it's obviously the injuries and things like that, but this could be a bounce back game, a sort of get right game for San Francisco, but it could also be the same for the Patriots. So while you do have to travel across the country, you also have 10 days rest, so you can get yourself right and move on from there. But I feel like the way they played on Thursday is the floor for what we're going to see. I don't know how much worse it gets. I mean, they got their butts kicked, and that's kind of what it was.
All right, real quick, Ted, before you go, Mike, I'm going to mute you so you can fix your mic, because this guy just can't figure out his technology whatsoever. Taylor, go ahead.
Real quick, I saw in the chat, don't worry, we got you tomorrow. Film review coming on tape Tuesday. But I would disagree. I don't think we've seen their ceiling or their floor, because their floor, it's like last year where we kept saying like, oh man, it's so bad. And I kept being like, it could get worse. Like if some key guys drop, it could get a lot worse for them. So like we've already seen with the offensive line, at one point we had 2 third stringers on the left side. Like, you're hoping obviously the health gets better, but I hope that we have not seen this team's, well, the floor, obviously, I hope that's the floor and they obviously improve. And in terms of ceiling, I mean, one thing studying this game relative to the others, like I did a piece on CLNS, where we are right now, where I broke down the context of the Jets game plan and what it meant based on the other weeks. And with the NFL, it's really hard to understand who teams are in the first month, because one game is a fluke. 2 games may be a pattern or a coincidence. 3 is where you really start to see, okay, this is what they're trying to be. And we've seen different scripts from this team. We saw the first week they want to be run heavy and they're playing great defense. The second week, it's a little bit more of both, but you still don't see nearly enough pop. And the defense has some issues with containing the quarterback and with busted coverages. Now, the third week, it's a pattern that these containing the quarterback is a legitimate problem. We're also 2 games straight where they haven't gotten a turnover. Those are things you want to look for. Then the tackling was really the biggest issue in the third game. And like you guys have said, when you're coming on a short week, especially with the overtime, the players don't want to use it as an excuse. But realistically, given how great this team has been tackling recently, I'm really not going to put one game in as the poster child of like, the defense is a disaster. You know, they need to keep the quarterback in, make sure they're tight on the back end. But offensively, like even them, I was saying before the game, I wanted to see them open things up a little bit more, because things were so congested and you can't be one-dimensional against these experienced, talented defenses. They tried to go more pass heavy, but their methodology was wrong, because they thought that, oh, we've only shown run out of these looks, we're going to catch the Jets off guard. The Jets are like, bro, I don't give a shit. Like, I haven't seen you run outside zone at me, so I'm not respecting it until you show me that I need to. And, you know, that obviously led to some negative plays and some really ugly reps. So now they know we have to establish the run in game, but the play action stuff looked good. We're seeing that Jacoby Brissett's pure dropbacks on early downs were almost gone. The only one was a Haas juke concept, where honestly, Jacoby could have gotten it out quicker to Hunter Henry. Instead, it was an incompletion to Tyquan Thornton. So I think we still have a lot to learn about this team. But in terms of morale and the important things, this week is huge. If you lose and you're not competitive, I think you start really fearing that Gerard could lose the locker room. And I'm not a guy who likes to, you know, be flashy or anything, but that's the reality based on how it felt in the locker room last week. If you lose and it's competitive, then we're going to be in another week of like, we kind of got to wait and see because it's bad, but at least they were close against still, you know, a 49ers team. And if they win, then this whole thing looks very different and we're kind of resetting where we were in week 1. So still a lot to learn. I think there were some encouraging signs, but also some things that seriously need to get fixed.
All right, so let me ask you this. We'll come back the other way, starting with Taylor. You mentioned kind of things getting progressively worse over the first 3 weeks as it relates to the coaching staff. The Bengals game, they had 2 months to prepare for. 2 months. You'd hope they'd come up with a good game plan in 2 months, and they did. They did. Then you have 1 full week, a regular game week, to get ready for Seattle. I don't think the coaching reflected as well in the Seattle game as it did the Cincinnati game. It wasn't bad, but I don't think it reflected nearly as well. Then you have the short week, which is a legitimate test, especially considering the injuries. But the way that team came out, you mentioned some of the play calling things. I just think the energy level, I would say the coaching staff failed that test. Now, not every week is going to be a short week. We'll revisit this again next year when they play on Thursday night. We will revisit it. But the bigger point being, outside of a game they had 2 months to get ready for, we still really haven't seen a game plan that you really sink your teeth into and say, yeah, all right, I like, you know, where this is going. How worried are you, or are you worried in the ability of the coaching staff to basically go week to week, because they need this coaching staff to elevate this team? We've known that since the beginning of the season. For this team to punch above its weight class, that's going to be on the coaching staff, putting the players in the best position to succeed. And it feels like through 3 games, as they've had less time to get ready, they've done less of that. Taylor.
I'd say I'm more worried about the defense because fundamentally they haven't been sound. And that's the one area where you're putting your hat on it. It's like most of the staff has been here. The new guys are experienced. These are a lot of players who've been in the system for a while. There's plenty. Like we always talk about how the Patriots aren't very talented. That's not true on defense. They're missing, obviously, Christian Barmore and Jawan Bentley. And like those are big losses, but this is still a super talented defense that should be keeping teams, under 20 points unless they're playing a real juggernaut or something like that. So they need to get this figured out quickly. Again, the short week, the blown coverages even against the Seahawks, like I'll give them some benefit of the doubt there because they are installing new things. It's September. We can't go, into the season saying September is extended preseason. And then when things look shaky in September, be like, they suck. We got to give it a little more time while being cautiously, observant. Offensively, I think this is just a new scheme. There's players. They're figuring out how to get them involved. I've been encouraged by the fact that they are showing growth. Like the DeMario Douglas, his involvement was spectacular. It was so many things I've been asking for them to do. Use it like Brian, I mentioned it, or Brian or Mike, it might have been both, where they never use Pop as the number 3 and empty, which is what they always did with Jules, where it's like, get him on a linebacker, like get him in space. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's trying to protect himself, so not as much yak, which I understand. Like, do the Tyler Lockett. I'd rather you catch a lot of passes than
which he was. He was doing that, and it was great. He was on the ground like every one of his receptions. He was diving, and he didn't take any big hits. So,
and that was smart. But then you had like the pitch, which is the first positive run they had all game, was something they built up going into the Seattle game. Just getting in the first RPO target. Every other time they ran RPO, it was a carry. So they're showing signs of growth, and they're showing, hey, we know the pass game is congested. Let's do something about that. Whereas with Bill O'Brien, at times I felt like there weren't significant enough changes from week to week where it's like, oh, they are getting better. Sometimes it just felt like, all right, now Mike Gesicki is the featured player. Like, great. So I will say, I think the offense is showing some encouraging signs, but at the end of the day, this offensive line needs to get it together. The play calling can improve, and I think it will, but there's only so much you can do with your offensive line is battered and still doesn't have its own identity.
Mike,
you guys can hear me okay now?
Yes, you're good.
We got you.
I get an Ethernet cable from Amit. I plug it into the computer. I see you guys clearly. Everything works good. And then I forget to turn on my correct mic. So that's just where we're at today. But on the coaching and where the Patriots are at now, like I think the scheme itself and all that jazz, if you will, to leading up to the game was fine. I think people questioned the early play action and the lack of establishing a run a little bit, which I get, but at the same time, they established the run for 2 straight games. And Taylor, you mentioned it to me earlier that I didn't fully, I wasn't able to fully dive into it, but they had never ran those looks before in their play action, like the pass off of it. So it would have been brand new to that defense. So I understood the premise. However, I still would have liked them to establish the run a little bit more in the game and get to those stuff later. But regardless, that wasn't the issue to me. I think at the end of the day, coaching is one about putting the players in the best position on the field to win, but it's also, Alex, like you sort of mentioned, getting them in position to win on a short week and having their, Mayo's never coached a short week before, so he's never had a no Monday practice, no Tuesday practice, quick Wednesday, like that. It's all new to him, and so maybe he learns from that and figures out, oh, I didn't have these guys right because X, Y, Z, whether they didn't get to recover enough. They didn't meet as much. They didn't touch on the things they wanted to touch on. And at the end of the day, they just weren't ready to go. So I think that's the main thing and the main focus on the coaching, that I don't think the on-field stuff was much of a problem. I just wonder how the week went, how they were able to actually prepare themselves. And I guess I'm more so curious as to why they weren't, get taken to the hill, why they weren't, we're stronger and more mentally tough than you in this game than they were in the first 2.
Brian.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of firsts on this coaching staff, right? Like first head coach, first year defensive coordinator. Van Pelt's really technically like a first time full-time play caller. So I think with similar to the roster, there were going to be bumps and bruises along the way here, right? And Thursday night on a short week was one of them, but you hope they take that and they learn and they grow. So I'm not too concerned. Like offensively, yeah, I agree with Mike. Like I would have loved them to kind of come out and run the ball a little bit more against the Jets defense that was struggling to stop the run, and then hopefully you can start hitting some play action passes off that. So I didn't love the game plan, but again, you hope offensively that type of stuff, they continue to grow there. And like you even hear, other coaches in that kind of outside zone scheme say like it can take over like a full season to really get that down and get everyone on the same page. Defensively, though, and Taylor, you kind of said it. That's where kind of the issue is, because these are a lot of the guys that have been here on the coaching staff, and I know they're missing some key playmakers, but just the fundamentals kind of fell off, and we're letting quarterbacks tear us up outside of the pocket, and a lot of that seems to be like some of these they're trying to generate pressure through schemes and line games, and now they're just completely losing contain. And we heard them say we want to be more aggressive, and like, is this coming back to backfire now? So I would hope the defense, like, and those guys that have been here again, can kind of clean some of that up. But I'm not overly concerned with the whole coaching staff through 3 weeks here.
Can I add to Brian's point, just because I literally just did the cut up on the times that they've let guys out of the pocket for scrambles? So it looked bad for Anthony Jennings against the Jets, but when I really looked closer, one, it was a chip where even if he used his hands, like, it just was tough. Another was a penalty. He got a holding call drawn, so that kind of wasn't the issue. Really, it hasn't even been the stunts, because they will have plays where, like, they drop an edge defender in coverage and try to blitz from the other, or sim pressure from the other side. And some quarterbacks, like that past couple of weeks, have used that to get out. But the biggest issue has been the fundamentals, where, like, we've asked him, and Gerard Mayo keeps saying it's about the fundamentals. Marcus Covington says it's about the fundamentals. Guys like Uche, sometimes Jennings, Keon White. Uche is the only real repeat offender. Either go too far around or they go inside. Like, that's the frustrating part, is these games are going to be a big part of what they do. But sometimes I'm like, do you think someone's coming around or what? Because it's like Godshaw or Daniel Aquale next to you, not Christian Barmore. So if you're trying to go inside, you can't expect anybody to be able to take even a Geno Smith or an Aaron Rodgers. So just on your point about them, not getting contained, it's really just been fundamentals more than anything else. Scheme stuff, that'll happen every once in a while against smart quarterbacks, but they've just got to be better.
Yeah, I'm with you, Taylor, on that. Like, especially with Josh Uche, the inside stuff, when it doesn't call for it, it's one thing to be more aggressive in going after the quarterback. It's another thing to just play hero ball. And that, to me, is kind of what it feels like Josh Uche is doing at this point. So that all started about 10 minutes ago with a question on the coaching staff. And Taylor was the one who said, let's keep it concise. I mean, they were all good points, but I really need, if Amit's watching, like the Tony Reale technology when we do these, where I can give people points or I can take points away. I guess I can mute you guys. I do have that ability, but I would love to turn this into like around the horn.
That would be good.
Feel free to mute me if I need
to. In the meantime, to go back to the coaching staff, they are now faced with Thursday Night Football was a big test. They are now faced with the biggest test they will face this year, and that is, what do you do about Drake Maye? When is the time to put him in the lineup? And I said this back at the draft, and I hammered this point home. I kind of wanted, and this was before the offensive line really became like an unmitigated disaster, because I thought they were, shocker, I thought they'd draft the left tackle considering they didn't have one. But that's just me. I said I would like to play the kid sooner rather than later, but if their plan is to wait, I'm okay with that, as long as they execute the plan. And that doesn't mean you have to sit the kid no matter what. But it means if you're sitting the kid because of X, Y, and Z, if those questions aren't answered, you don't go put him in just because of external pressure. There's a lot of external pressure about Drake Maye right now. There is a large segment of the fan base. There are those in the media that don't want to just see him starting against Miami in week 5. They want to see him start this week against San Francisco. It's not easy right now to bench Drake Maye, but I think that's part of their plan. When you factor in the offensive line, I think it's the right call. So the question is, how do they thread the needle? And I'll just say this. I think I'm in this rare camp. Everybody seems to be on one of the extremes. Either he should play right now or he shouldn't play at all this year. He should play right now because it's the NFL. Guys get hit. Deal with it. The team's boring. I don't want to watch a boring team. And that's me parroting these idiots. And then you have the idiots on the other side saying he shouldn't play at all this year because the line's not good. To which I would say, the line's not good. It sucks. They're the worst pass blocking line in the NFL. And you shouldn't play him behind that, because this is not just, oh, he's going to get hit. He's going to face pressure. He needs to learn how to do it. This is more than that. This is so much more than that. This is learning how to drive by getting behind the seat of a NASCAR in the Daytona 500. Right? I think, we all learn to drive, you go with your parents to an empty parking lot somewhere and you just kind of drive around the parking lot. No, this is like, you've never been behind the wheel. You're going to race the Daytona 500. It's chaos. That doesn't mean they can't get to a place where it's reasonable this year. The line might not be good this year. I don't think it will be good this year, but it can be better. Case in point, just as arbitrary number, because Next Gen Stats has them 44.8% pressure rate, worse than the league through 3 games. Can they get under 40? That would make them the 26th best pass blocking line. Doesn't seem like much of an ask. It's still a lot of pressure, but now you're not recklessly putting this kid in harm's way where he's going to develop bad habits and potentially suffer a long-term injury where he loses a full year of development. I know, a lot of people kind of have, what's it called? That thing where baby, when it can't see it, it freaks out. Object permanence. I know a lot of people have object permanence when it comes to Drake Maye. They practice 3, sometimes even 4 days a week. He is getting some work in. That goes away if he gets hurt. To me, can you get to a baseline where at least it's not elevated risk? It's just that background risk that comes with playing in the NFL. I think they can get there, and I've been consistent on this. I said from the beginning in the summer, figure out your best 5, then put Drake Maye in. I think they should know what their best 5 is right now. It might be by default because this group hasn't even played together. But to me, it's left tackle, Vidarian Lowe. You let City Michael Jordan, Layden Robinson battle that at left guard. I think you could have a competition there and still have Drake Maye in. That's fine. David Andrews at center. Right. David Andrews at center. Mike Onwenu at right guard. Caden Wallace at right tackle. My answer on the Drake Maye thing is when you have that line, I'll have the conversation. If you have players out of position, guys who have never played in the NFL before, like unprepared rookies, I'm not putting him in. No shot. I'm not having the conversation until they get a real line, Mike.
Well, so there was earlier in the offseason, before the draft even started, before free agency, there was the report from the Combine that the Patriots were going to sign a quarterback. They were going to draft a quarterback. They were going to trade Mac Jones. And not reported in that was, they also said that they were going to start the veteran and let the rookie take over eventually throughout the season. Now, obviously not in that report is when that was actually going to happen. But I would think the premise of that was get the offensive line moving in the right direction from week 1, week 2, week 3 on, so that by this sweet spot, week 4, 5, 6, 7, that we even talked about on here in the preseason, that you could put him behind at least a competent offensive line that's seeing things through the same lens. Now, they've gone in the wrong direction. They've gotten worse since week 1. Now, they've also had they've dealt with injuries, and they're on their
injuries are a big part of that.
Yeah, they've started three left tackles in 3 games. So at some point, it's like I'm with you where there shouldn't be this two extremes where he either plays this week in San Francisco or he doesn't play till week 1, 2025, where they can now push that back a little bit and maybe start him later on in the season and still allow him to get behind, like you said, those 5 guys.
Yeah,
that is their best option. And so I think that maybe week 5 against Miami that we've talked about is a little soon, but once these guys get healthy, I think you're going to see a difference where it's at least serviceable. And you mentioned that number, that threshold where the pressure rate is X. Now, I don't think they'll actually look at it as a number.
No, I'm just doing that to give people a way to comprehend it. And I'll say this too. If you have that line against Miami, I'll have the conversation about the Miami game. I just want that.
So you don't want to see them together first in game action before you put Maye out there?
Maybe, but
depends on how Jacoby's playing.
Right.
That's a factor as well, of course.
I do also think there's value in Drake Maye playing this year. One, for him. I know I just said that whole thing about object permanence, but there is development that happens in game that you don't get on the practice field. Doesn't mean you can't develop on the practice field, and that's still valuable. But on field chemistry, development, things like that is important. It also helps the front office a lot, because you get an idea of kind of how his strengths and weaknesses play at the NFL level. You can plan your offseason accordingly around that. The more games you get, the bigger sample size you have. And you also ideally get him making some plays that you can use to pitch free agents, where if he just plays week 18 against backups, you're not really going to get that. So there is value in him playing this year too. I just think it's about it happening at the right time, Brian.
And can I quickly add one thing? Just sorry before to cut you off, Brian, but I wonder where Van Pelt.
Don't say I don't try to keep the show moving.
I know. I wonder where Van Pelt and Mayo are on, together or apart on this decision. Now, I don't like to look too far into after a game before there's been any coaches meetings or conversations where somebody asks Gerard Mayo, is there room for a quarterback change? Could that happen? And he says, I don't know. And everybody runs with it. And he opened the door. And then he closes it the next morning, which is fine. But then Alex Van Pelt is asked by Karen, is he better off playing? Is he better off sitting still? And Van Pelt is straight up like, no, I still believe he's better off sitting. So I wonder if there's any sort of divide at all, but not a divide as if it's a bad thing, but where there's the disagreement and if that factors into this as well moving forward. Because it seems like Mayo told us, I asked the question, but was it his or Van Pelt's decision to put Maye in? And he said it was mine 100%. And then the next day, Alex Van Pelt says, well, I'm not ready to play. And so I wonder where that's going on and what's happening there.
It's a fair question.
A little bit.
Brian.
Yep. Yeah, I think Drake has to play at some point this year. Like a whole redshirt season would just kind of be crazy unless Jacoby somehow, Taylor, I think you said at Gillette today, like unless Jacoby somehow has you in the playoffs, like if you're a wild card team, like pulling him, then it would be tough in the locker room. So I think Drake has to play, but it just can't be behind a historically bad offensive line in terms of pressure rate, because that's where they're kind of at right now. And
historically bad. Emphasize that. Historically bad. I don't think people get that.
Bad. Yeah,
I know offensive line plays bad, and people will be like, well, the offensive line plays bad around the whole league. They're the worst of the sucky league.
Yeah.
Yes, the league sucks on the offensive line, and they're still worst. They're the worst of the worst. Sorry, continue.
So I think it was his second drop back even against the Jets last night. Like Thursday night, he's taking off before he even hits the top of his drop. And there might have been like he saw a hole and it was man to man, so he wanted to make a play with his legs, which he can do, but there's also, TC McCartney said, like, we got to play quarterback at some point and we got to hit our first read. We got to try to hit our second read. And then we can go make Drake Maye plays with our legs, which then you saw on that later 4th and 11 scramble that he picks it up. So that's what you're worried about, that play. Like he's taken off before he even gets the top of his drop because there's pressure. So you got to find a way to get to that, improve that a little bit. Barth, I agree with you that offensive line you laid out is probably their best path to doing that. But we saw at practice today, Vidarian Lowe is still limited with that knee injury. So Caden Wallace is back at left tackle. Michael Winu's still at right tackle. City So's back, which helps the interior, should help the interior. So injuries are still, hurting the offensive line, which is inevitably hurting when Drake Maye might see the field here.
Taylor.
Yeah, I think putting Drake Maye behind like a bit of a battered line, it's one thing if they decide in practice he's ready and they make the move and put him out there and then guys drop, because then it's just like, all right, that's football at some point. But the bottom line is they cannot listen to external opinions. They need to stick to their plan. I don't doubt that they will. Like I feel like I highly doubt that Van Pelt had zero say in starting Drake, like whether or not he agreed. It would be so out of character based on what we've heard Gerard Mayo say for him to just like not even consult Alex Van Pelt and just throw his guy in there. Now, when it happened, Mike, you were sitting next to me, like I was not happy. And I'm just like, I hope he hands off. If he doesn't, this is going to be really ugly. And at times it was. Like Drake admitted it wasn't a great drive from him. We can hype up the like 2 or 3 good plays, but there were also things where like he didn't look great in the quick game. And, obviously, even on the throw that he had to Pop Douglas, he did that thing where he sees an edge defender cave in and then he drifts outside. But in the NFL, those guys are quicker. And at some point, he's going to go in and someone's going to loop around and he's not going to expect it and he's going to get dropped. Like there were times in that drive where I'm like, this is why I don't want him in quite yet. Like he may be killing it in practice. And obviously when he comes in, he's going to make mistakes and have to learn from them. We addressed that going back to the summer when we said that he should play at some point. But one, I think the offensive line, when you do put him in, the first check mark has to be Drake looks good in practice. He's showing enough that we think even if he makes mistakes, he'll be able to build and, compete on an NFL field. And then it's okay. Can we support him with a decent offensive line? I'm not saying these guys need 3 weeks of chemistry, but if even it's the first time we're seeing Lowe, So, Andrews, and Wenu, and whether it's Caden Wallace or whomever, Like, I'm honestly okay with that because I think that's the best you can do. And if you think Drake's going to be solid, then he can grow with that unit. But I just don't like the idea of one rushing him out or then putting him behind an offensive line that could have multiple backups or a second stringer and even multiple rookies on the offensive line doesn't really sit great with me.
I say what you're going to say. You're going to say bad starters. Say what you're going to say.
No, I wasn't. No, honestly, just like multiple rookies is not a good idea, I don't think, because we've seen Layden Robinson's getting better every week. He still has some lapses, like a handful every game.
Especially in pass pro.
Yeah, and Caden Wallace, that's his big thing where he loves the hug technique where you get your hands around guys and try to basically just move them around the pocket. But his whole thing is he struggles with power and length. And like one of the pressures he gave up where it blew up a play action was he got a hand in his chest and he got walked back and was trying to grab to make contact and he couldn't. So like those things are going to happen. So I don't love the idea necessarily of two rookies on the offensive line with Drake Maye, but I just want a group that they feel comfortable with and for him to have done enough in practice to earn going out there. Unless, of course, Jacoby starts throwing interceptions and it becomes Mac Jones, where it's like you're not making touchdowns or big throws and you're turning the ball over. Like that is not sustainable. But I understand Gerard Mayo being like, hey, our defense needs to be better. We need to lean more on our run game and our run blocking needs to be better from what it was against the Jets. Yeah, we're keeping Jacoby in there because he's not going to be a net negative on the field.
All right, let's take some. Let's hear from our friends at Game Time, and then we'll take some questions.
All righty, game time. Let me pull up the B-roll, and then I can get my read going because football's back. Again? It should work. But yeah, there it is. I think we're on, right? Football's back. Let me know if it's on.
It's not.
Oh wait, man. Oh,
why?
This is why it does this all the time.
It doesn't, and it doesn't work. It's not. This isn't my computer. This is just StreamYard. It doesn't come up because I'm telling it to be up there, and it's not there.
There it is.
Okay, that's game time. Football's back. Patriots are back. They've played 3 games now. Prices at these events continue to drop as you get closer to it, and that's because our friends at Game Time allow them to. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through those thousands of tickets. I'm on the Game Time app right now, and I don't know if you're going to take the trip out to San Francisco. It's a pretty long one, not going to lie. But right now, you can get in to Levi's Stadium for as little as $131 with the Game Time app. Not bad. Just have to consider the flight out there. But if you're watching out there, if you're watching on the West Coast, get out to Levi's and you can get in for as little as $131. Right now, you can get into Dolphins at Patriots the following weekend, perhaps Drake Maye's debut, for as little as $116. Not too shabby for a Patriots ticket. That's Game Time. They also have concert tickets. They also have theater tickets. So it's not just sports. So make sure you check it out today. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
All right, so that's basically all the big Patriots news for the day. Unless any of you guys have any pressing thoughts on Jalen McKenzie. All open the floor. Jalen McKenzie takes.
He has 3 position flexibility. He played guard and he's played both tackle spots. Mostly been a left tackle in the NFL. He was right and right guard in college. So kind of like the reverse of Chuks Okorafor a little bit. I haven't watched a ton of his tape, but I read some reports that said he likes to finish. I couldn't find his, I don't think he was at the combine or anything, so I couldn't find his mock draftable to see the arm length and everything. But given their scheme, I'm guessing he has long arms. So long arms, finisher, sounds like their kind of guy.
So there you go. In case you missed it, Patriots signed Jalen McKenzie, the practice squad today. All right, let's start. If you want to have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Those of you on YouTube know the drill. If you're watching on Twitter X, there is a live chat thing down at the bottom if you open it full screen. So I feel like 90% of the questions we get are YouTube, so I want to make sure those people aren't left out. And we will start with D, who is kind enough to throw us $5 for this one. So D, you get to go first here. AVP's offense is outdated. It's not creative at all. We need a coordinator off the Kyle Shanahan tree. I guess we'll start here. How do you feel about Alex Van Pelt, Brian?
I thought you were going to go on a Kyle Shanahan rant for us just to kick this off.
He's doing it for me. He's doing it for me. What more do I need to say? The guy sucks at managing games. He can't hold on to a win in the fourth quarter against a beaten and battered Rams team. Like, there's nothing more I can add. It's hat on a hat. the game plan for the Patriots next week, be within 14 late in the game. Just let Kyle Shanahan happen.
Let him implode.
Congratulations, you won. The guys, and it's crazy. So this goes to a bigger point I have. If you really want to go off on this, I'll pull that back up. But and here's where it's different. I've said Kyle Shanahan's a really good offensive coordinator. There's a difference between being an offensive coordinator and a head coach. Josh McDaniels, good offensive coordinator, bad head coach. Kyle Shanahan's still one of the best head coaches in the league because the coaching in the league sucks. It sucks. Going back, it's the whole thing about scoring being down and passing being down, which, by the way, first off, I see all these people using like passing yards per game and points per game. If that's all you watch football for, one, you're not a football fan, you're a fantasy football fan. Two, there's a league up in Canada that excels at all of that. 2 more yards per pass attempt, averaging like 15 more points per game. If that's all you want, Canada. But so, I've seen the scoring's down around the league.
Get ready to learn Canadian, buddy.
You go back and you watch all these games like one-off, right? And you kind of see it, but it's like, all right, it's early in the season, whatever. Watching Red Zone yesterday, finally get a chance to do that.
Oh my God.
It was jarring.
It was bad.
It was jarring how little offensive production there is. And I think there's 3 driving forces. One, there's much less practice time now than there was 10 years ago. And the practice time you have is more limited. 2, the quarterback play in the NFL right now, significantly worse than it was 10 years ago.
Donkey.
We can't start that rant.
We lived in a golden age of quarterbacking from the mid-aughts through the 2010s. Doesn't mean that all the quarterbacks are bad. There are less great quarterbacks. There may still be good quarterbacks. There are less great quarterbacks than there were 10 years ago. And the coaching is much worse than it was 10 years ago because teams know if they have a good offensive coordinator, there's no stability there. So they hire these offensive coordinators as head coaches to be able to keep them in the organization, even if they're not actually good head coaches. That all being said, the Shanahan tree produced a lot of good offensive coordinators. I don't want one as a head coach. If you want to talk to me about a coordinator, maybe, but Van Pelt is like loosely from that tree. Loosely. So this may just be general frustration. I'll let anybody weigh in.
I don't have any Kyle Shanahan thoughts. I was just hoping Josh Allen would throw a touchdown during that rant so we could have a Josh Allen and Kyle Shanahan take from Barth.
Probably threw a pick instead.
I
forgot that game's on.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thoughts on Shanahan?
I like it. But
or thoughts on Van Pelt? Are you worried about Van Pelt?
Yeah.
You worried? Are you worried Van Pelt could be one and done?
I mean, it's just way too early for that. Also, this is what frustrates me. People say these things, and it's like, well, where's your proof? Yeah, he should have run the ball more. Okay, then is that it? Because I looked at every snap that he's had in each of the past 3 games, and I've seen Bill O'Brien's offense, I've seen Josh McDaniels' offense, I've seen whatever the hell Matt Patricia was doing. Alex Van Pelt, I do not think is bad at designing plays. He's actually done a very good job at setting things up from week to week, building on looks. Bill O'Brien, a lot of this scheme was pretty straightforward. What you saw, you were going to see some repeat looks. You don't really see that a ton with the Patriots. And if you do, it's usually because that's a base package that you're using to set something else up. So I need someone to explain to me why Alex Van Pelt isn't creative at all. Is he what I thought he would be based on the Cleveland tape where there's a ton of trick plays and heavy misdirection all the time? No. But also, I wanted to see how he looked after a handful of games rather than 1 or 2 to be okay, is he just not really showing us anything early, but then we start seeing a little more trickery? That's what we saw last week. It didn't work, obviously, but I think the scheme was there. They just needed to coordinate it a little bit better. And that's part of being a first-time play caller. The first game, he does a great job listening to his players, shifting the philosophy, and it worked. Now this is a game where the game got away from him so quickly he couldn't adjust. So thank you, D, very much for the tip. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it, but miss me with that unless you have an actual argument.
All right,
Alex, does San Francisco win that game with Jimmy Garoppolo?
No.
Brock played well in that game, didn't he?
I know.
Yeah,
Alex just hates.
Brock was dealing at one point.
Alex just hates Shanahan. He hates Jimmy, so I had to.
I don't hate Kyle Shanahan or Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes, you do.
Right? No, I'm just right about them. I'm just right about them. You.
I mean, both of them have their own track records. It speaks for themselves.
Right. Where's Jimmy Garoppolo right now? Jimmy Garoppolo actually did win that game, Mike. To your point,
yes, he did.
Because he's the backup for the Rams.
Yeah, this was
All
his
right.
first game back after a steroid suspension.
Those are, I don't think the performance is being enhanced in the PEDs. I kind of like this question here. Whatever about Robert Spillane. I do think Robert Spillane's a good player, but I'm just going to skip that part. Trade
He's
for
like the
Devontae
starting
Adams.
Joe Giles Harris.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Swagged out too. He's got like the dark
Yeah.
visor and arm
Looks
sleeve.
good.
Devontae Adams looks. Speaking of Jimmy Garoppolo, Devontae Adams looks miserable in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
That team's not good. They might be selling at the deadline. I'm not saying the Patriots are in a position to buy, but one of these stud receivers is going to be available, and they should move him because, again, he's miserable. That's just not a good situation. He is 31 years old.
Sorry, I missed it. Did something happen this weekend with him?
He was just pissed off, it looked like.
Okay,
and then
Yeah, he was pissed
Right,
off.
right.
on
I
the
don't know.
sideline.
So Antonio Pierce had that quote where he was like, guys made business decisions and now we have to make business decisions as a team. I don't know if he got lumped into that group. Like if he did something where
So
like Jack Jones, old friend Jack Jones, there was some
Right.
film going around of him making
did
some
not-
real business decisions and not tackling players. So,
I'm shocked.
but
I
I don't know if Devontae Adams got in that group, but there was some videos of him like on the sideline, just generally looking pissed off, as you expect he would when he gets 3 catches or whatever it was in a blowout loss.
The
So
viral
I don't
clip
want
that went
Devontae
around.
Adams.
What's that? Sorry, just real quick, Taylor. The viral clip that went
Yeah.
around was at the end of the first half, as the team starts walking back to the locker room, he's just like sitting on the bench with his head back as like his teammates walk by him to go back to the locker room. Like the
That's
vibes
a
are
man who's
not
sick and
good.
tired of his situation. That's a captain.
So-
Oh, it's a terrible look.
But that being said, 31 years old, had 103 catches for 1,100 yards last year in a really bad offense. Do you make the call if you're the Patriots, Mike?
If he doesn't want to play in Las Vegas with a player's coach, even though they're bad on a team that's rebuilding, why would he want to play here? You're going to trade him here, and you're going to trade him here, and he's going to do the same stuff. I was going to rebuttal with a guy like Aiden O'Connell, and that's not Drake Maye. That's not what I'm saying. But there was promise with Aiden O'Connell last year, and they had a little bit of a rapport for a second, and now they're back to Gardner Minshew. I don't think that matters. I think if you trade him here at the deadline, he's not going to be happy because this team's not winning. And he played well last year, and he was mad as soon as he was basically mad as soon as Derek Carr left that team because they were friends in college, and that's why he went there in the first place. He wanted out. He's wanted out, but he wants to win now. The Patriots aren't going to be able to win now, so I don't think Devontae Adams is going to want to be here.
All right.
Mike
thoughts?
ate and left no crumbs.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm like kind of interested in that in him just because I think he's a great player, but that's a fair point. Like, if he's not going to buy in, that's not what you want around your young quarterback. Fair enough.
Yeah. I still think he has gas in the tank, but I just don't see him wanting to play here.
Sure. Yeah, and you don't want to deal with the headache. Now,
for a really good receiver to give Drake Maye and you just win games and everyone's happy.
I don't think any veteran receiver is going to come here with a quarterback who's not played a meaningful drive.
You're
so
trading
okay.
for him.
Let me ask you this.
But if it's a veteran who's good enough that you want him, he probably has some say in where he goes.
Okay.
They were trading for Brandon Ayuk, and he said no.
Right.
There's an out. Well, that's why I think Drake Maye needs to play this year to show the quarterback.
That was just a little. Ayuk would be a little different because like he wouldn't sign an extension. Devontae's already signed.
No, that's
well.
Like he could hold out,
happy, like Mike said, but he's already been paid. It's not even like he's going to come here and they're going to be like, "Oh, we're going to give you new money."
Yeah,
he's coming here on the same deal in another bad situation.
So Devontae is signed, but according to Over the Cap, there's very little guaranteed money in the contract, and there is an out after this season. Now, I would go after him in free agency, especially if you can go out and get like a DK Metcalf. Pay Adams too. You have the money. That's wishful
Imagine
thinking.
I got the both of them.
Yeah. All right. One more. Let's take this question.
Stand for drop. Just saying.
I mean,
what?
Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk.
And DK stand for drops.
Have you seen Brandon Ayuk lately?
No, I actually haven't. Is he been doing the same thing?
Yeah, you said bad drops. Any chance Drake Maye plays this week? We did the whole Drake Maye thing, and we didn't really talk about this week. We kind of blew by it. we got to week 5. I don't think there's a chance because the line's going to be a disaster. If they're not going to have a Darian Loback, we'll see where Caden Wallace at. He had a pretty big brace on his knee today. He was participating, but it was a very light practice. I would be very surprised if Drake Maye starts this week. Maybe he plays a little bit at the end. I'd be shocked if he starts this week.
He's not starting. Everyone has said otherwise, but with the offensive line, like maybe Jacoby's taking a beating, right? Like you have to account that Jacoby could get hurt in any of these games, even though like you're not rooting for that, but it's a real possibility. And then if they get blown out, do we see another mop up drive or two at the end of the game? So I think there could be a small possibility he comes into the game, but he's not going to start this week. I would be shocked.
Can you imagine they blow out the 49ers and Drake
Well,
Maye
I
goes
meant
in
they
because
get
it's
blown
like,
out.
oh, we're fine.
They would get
I'm
blown out.
not saying you're saying that,
not-
but that would
They
be
are not doing the blowout.
That would be something. I'll bring this up too. You're right. Adams isn't coming here because he hates Josh McDaniels.
Oh,
True.
yeah.
He's
Oh,
been
yeah,
smelling
true.
in the
And
state.
he's around the facility sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear from our friends at Prize Picks, and we'll take maybe like 1 or 2 more questions.
Let's do it. Prize picks. Let's see if the B-roll will roll. But we have multiple B-rolls here actually on the prize picks because me and Taylor hit our prize picks last week at MetLife Stadium. We'll show you those picks in a second because those ones hit, and we got a couple more coming down the pipe tonight on Double Monday Night Football. But Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike the other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. The one me and Taylor hit on last week, it was... Tell me if it's up, please, because I can't see it.
I think
Garrett,
that's it. Yeah.
it was Garrett less than
Pop, Garrett Wilson, and
Yeah.
Caleb Williams. That's up.
Yep,
Yeah.
that one hit. Caleb hit with us on Sunday. We had Pops over, and we had Garrett Wilson's under. Taylor went with that for the second week in a row on the less on the longest reception.
Don't play scared.
Don't play scared. We go back to it, and we are 1-0 in our last one on the Pats Daily Prize Picks. So make sure you go head over there. We, like I said, we hit it with the Caleb Williams square as well. That is still free this weekend. One more week in the month of September. So make sure you go over there and get on the action with us today. Download the Prize Picks app and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right.
Alex, two quick things.
Yeah.
Really, one, the bet. Christian Gonzalez still has not given up an explosive reception. He and Marlon Humphrey are the only cornerbacks in the NFL with 15 or more targets who have not given up an explosive catch. Thought that was fun because of the opponent receiver thing. Also, I think you'll like this, Alex. Julian Pearl was with the Patriots today for a workout. He was somebody that we were talking about in the pre-draft process as like a late round possible fit. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I just saw a list.
I didn't see that. I do remember Julian Pearl. I just had to look it up real quick, but yeah, I'm all for more. He played left, right? He played left in Illinois.
He's like long but really light I think was his profile.
I'm all for more left tackles, and that's why I'm going to bring this up because this has been talked about this week quite a bit, and I just want to say my piece on it. And Taylor, I know you have a piece on this too. Who are the left tackles the Patriots could have added? Because you've heard me bemoan quite a bit that they had nobody who's played left tackle.
Sit back and watch this.
I'm just going to give you some names of guys
This
who
might have to be the last question because it's going to go long.
we have one more after this. All left tackles that are still on their teams, still in the league, experienced playing left tackle that signed for less money than Chuck's core in free agency. Cam Fleming, Cornelius Lucas, Andres Pete, Josh Jones, Chuma Edoga. Here's the point. Are any of those guys good? Not particularly. But they've played over there. They have experience. And that's more the issue. The issue is not that they didn't sign a good left tackle, because I don't think they were going to be able to do that. The issue is they didn't sign a backup plan. Their top 2 options at left tackle were right tackles. Any of those guys have at least played the position, and that's the difference. You don't have to throw Caden Wallace over there. That brings me to my other point. And there's some revisionist history here. I would almost rather they had not signed Chooks. knowing what their plan was for him. And the reason I say that, it's nothing against him personally, but okay, so part of it was developing Kane Wallace at left tackle. That was part of the plan. Vidarian Lowe was also in the play. Like, there were young guys that could have used the reps in camp that he didn't get. And those reps were ultimately going nowhere. And I don't mean that by him leaving the team. I mean that by there's very little development. He's a player that wasn't engaged. I wish that if the plan was to just draft and develop and work with the young guys and bet on Scott Peters, they would have done that. And instead of signing Chooks, just signing a guy who would have been lower on the depth chart, who would have been a body, but maybe not taken up developmental reps. So that's the list of left tackles. If you're going to tell me you wouldn't have wanted any of those guys over Chooks, that's fine. I would have just ridden with the kids 100% then.
Can you give me that list one more time? I'm going to search and see what all of their pass protection stats are. I'm just going to go with the grades and if they didn't play a snap yet. Are all those guys
not great? They're probably not great. I'll say that.
Real quick, let me even see if they played yet.
Cam Fleming.
He just had a workout today, didn't he?
Cornelius Lucas. I put this list together last week. They were all on rosters last week.
Cornelius Lucas has actually been good for the Commanders. 57 stats, the 10th best pass pro grade. Okay, so I'll give you that one.
I think Andrews Pete's playing guard at this point. I literally typed in like free agents who had played left tackle. Andrews Pete's a guard.
Yeah, he's done.
He's cooked. That's fine. I think Josh Jones has been decent.
Pete is Riley Reeve.
Yeah, Pete's. I am literally just naming guys who played left tackle who were free agents. That's the point of the take. I'm not saying any of them had been good.
And I understand, like we talked about this in the chat, and it was after the game, and I was so mad in the car. I think it was the most angry I've ever been at you, which is how you know I was just like 2:00 in the morning, and I was so done.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
My thing is that, sure, like Chooks had not played on the left side as a pro, but he is the only one of those people who has been a legitimate starter in the NFL for multiple seasons, and he did have left tackle experience in college. Now, of course, he said to my face that he did not feel comfortable playing left tackle. I get that. It makes it very weird when, I doubt that Elliot Wolf didn't tell him that there was a chance he was going to play left tackle. There's absolutely no way, because if he looked at the depth chart, he would have been like, didn't one who played tackle last year? So where do I fit in? There's no way he didn't know that, right? Chooks is also 26 years old, has legitimately good physical tools, and is like a pretty smart player. The issue was that he didn't know how to play on the left side. And I would still stand firm that if he were on the right side, I would feel much more comfortable putting like Mac Jones in, and I feel better about the line. So I feel like that's a hindsight thing. I really do. Because at the time, I was adamant the only other realistic player I would have liked was Jonah Williams. But Jonah Williams also has his own little injury history as well. Chooks has a pretty clean injury history. I understand the frustration, and it's like, why can't they find someone? It's just like the reality is it's very hard. And just because a guy has experience at left tackle doesn't mean he's good. Would we feel better if a guy was allowing a 30% pressure rate? And it's like, oh, well, at least he played left tackle 2 years ago. Like, no one cares if he sucks still. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
and so serviceable starting caliber lineman who's playing on the wrong side, but he's a starting caliber lineman. Those other guys are all spot starters at best.
Well, but all right. So here's what I'd say about Chooks. If the plan was to play him at right tackle and you made that sign and to keep Onwenu at guard, then I don't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hindsight for us, but it's not hindsight for them.
But he was also right tackle until injuries hit. Like, they did want him back on the right side, and we all like that offensive line combination before Lowe went down.
That wasn't their initial plan. And we know that because Elliot Wolf told us going into the draft that the plan was for him to play at left tackle. It didn't work. They'd have moved him to the right in camp. Then they moved him back to left because of injuries.
But they also said, Elliot Wolf, that they thought Vidarian Lowe could be a starting caliber player if he learned to use his length. And obviously, I think a full-on starter is a bit much. I said so at the time. As much as I like Vidarian, I think he's a spot starter. But even still, if they thought that he could be someone that they could throw in there, then it's like, okay, we'll try Chooks. If he doesn't work out, Vidarian Lowe is going to be a left tackle. That's what happened very quickly in the spring. It's not like they didn't decide this till the last week. They wanted Chooks on the right. And at left, they were like, okay, Vidarian's probably our best bet. And he didn't look that bad. For the situation they're in, he's fine. He's fine. He's going to give up his pressures, but he's not going to get beat inside, which was the thing last year where I was like, dude, this is the one thing that you cannot do. So I don't think it was purely Chooks or bust. It was Chooks, then maybe Vidarian, and maybe Caden. And we've seen all of those.
But
We see those permutations, but given how hard it is to find a left tackle, I hesitate to sit here and say that they didn't have a plan or that like they just completely botched it. Like I think they genuinely did the best with what they could as an organization that nobody wants to come to.
I just think I think those other options you gave kind of are bust. That's the difference. And we're just gonna have to agree to disagree here. But to me, give me the subpar left tackle who's played there over the average right tackle who hasn't played the left on it.
And I also
left tackle. His name is Madarian Lowe. What are we talking about?
But
Taylor, then I go back to the point where I say, fine, then I would have just made Vidarian Lowe the plan and not signed Chuks Okorafor and given more reps to the kids to develop.
But again, in the summer, like early in the summer, we saw Vidarian on the left and Chuks on the right, and no one was complaining. So, like, this is why it feels revisionist to me, because you sign a half-ass guy who you expect. It would have been worse if they had signed Cam Fleming to start at left tackle. That would have looked terrible, because it's like you're going to take
I don't think he would have been starting.
Taking guys that were more spot starters and signing them at right tackle to see who's stuck.
I don't think he would have been starting though.
With a multi-year starter.
I don't think Fleming would have been starting. I think Lowe would have been starting, and Fleming would have been a body to just fill out the depth chart. And for the record, this summer, I wanted Caden Wallace playing more.
Fleming's literally not on a team. If he was that good, they could sign him right now. Like, what are we doing here? I'm talking about guys who are literally free agents right now. What?
All right, Brian, Mike, you want to weigh in?
All I was gonna say was I think two things can be true at once, where it's very hard to find good left tackles in the league, and the Patriots could have tried a little bit harder to acquire one. And
I think for Tyler Guyton, which they reportedly did, right tackle Tyler Guyton, now left tackle for the Cowboys.
Okay, my rebuttal to that is try a little harder. Add another pick. Try and trade.
Sure.
No, I mean, seriously. Like, yeah, they tried to trade for him, but they clearly didn't want him bad enough if they didn't make it happen.
That's not true. We literally heard a story from Cameron Wolf himself about how they tried to trade for Leggett or Keon Coleman or whatever. Right. And the Bills went out of their way to be like, haha, stupid. We're not trading. Dude.
And first of all, by the way, the Bills yelling "haha, stupid" for what their draft was is hilarious.
Yeah, right. After
Brian, real quick, because I want to get into one more thing.
My big thing is like they should have. You just said it, Barth, but they should have just played the kids more in the summer. Like get Caden Wallace as much experience as possible out there in the summer, because he was with that second unit so much. So I agree. Like with Taylor, it's tough to find these guys at any point of the year, especially last offseason. But I think they could have just handled the guys they had a little bit better in the summer.
Taylor, to be fair, like with the Layden Robinson situation, makes me wonder, like, because Caden was out there. We remember he was like repping with the starters, and then it stopped. Mm-hmm. And we've seen like in practice, in games, losing as a pass protector have been his issue. So it feels like, at least with Lowe, they're like, okay, he gives us more stability than what we get with Caden. Even with more reps, they're probably like, well, we're gambling with Caden. At least Vidarian is a veteran who's shown us something. Like Brian, I'm trying. I really am considering that, but I feel like with Caden, the way that went, they felt a certain way behind the scenes and thought that he wasn't really ready to start, especially left tackle in year one.
Fair enough. I would have liked to see. I think if he'd had more reps in the summer, maybe he'd be more ready. But again, we'll never know.
Layden didn't, and he made it.
Layden Robinson, low key, might be like the most impressive player on this team, pound for pound, so far this year. Like considering,
Bryce Behringer.
but we know Bryce Behringer's a stud.
True.
Right? We know what he's all about. Vidarian Lowe, most people left him off the roster projection when we started camp. And now we're all sitting here saying, you didn't, Taylor, good call. And like the rest of us idiots did. And now we're all sitting here saying, the future of the organization cannot continue without Vidarian Lowe. So would you look at that? But that
just shows you how bad of a position they're in.
My victory laps. I had no idea Vidarian was going to start. I want to be modest as well. Like that blew my mind
out of nowhere.
But then after like a week of practice, I'm like, I haven't noticed him. That's good.
Although you were hammering the point that as rough as it got for him last year at times, that was really on the right side. Once he was on the left, it was honestly, you opened my eyes on that one. So that was a great take by you to pick up on that. But that brings it in good game. That was a good back and forth. Well played.
Oh God. I hope nobody clips that. Oh my God.
All right, I'll bail you out. We'll go to the last question. That all brings us to through 4 weeks. Who do you got? Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks? Because, well, we're all impressed with Vidarian Lowe. He's not a long-term answer. one of these guys probably is. Who do you got? I know we all haven't watched a ton of them, but
Will Campbell.
people want the answers. Mike, Will Campbell?
Yeah.
I think I'm team Kelvin Banks.
I'm leaning Banks too. Will Campbell, it's close. Will Campbell might have a little bit of a penalty problem. And
so that's reared its ugly head now.
Tiebreaker.
Trevor Penning penalty problem?
No, he just false starts a lot.
Oh.
And by a lot, I mean like
just
4
gonna
times.
Say he just falls a lot.
No. He false starts, and by a lot, it's like 3 or 4 times, but Kelvin Banks hasn't, and it kind of feels neck and neck.
I haven't watched Kelvin Banks. I've only seen Will Campbell's Jaden Daniels, reps. And I liked it. I remember last year being like, this guy must be bad because he's basically standing up straight. And he never gave up any pressures. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? So right now I'm going with Will Campbell, but that's also because I don't think I've watched any of Kelvin Banks enough to notice.
Or they could take the LSU right tackle and switch him to left tackle.
Yeah, let's do another year. Emory chose. Let's do another year of that.
They should just draft Travis Hunter.
He's good. Their right tackle is good, but no, left tackle is only.
I'm so done. No more. This is the one time you listen to your fan base and just get the GD left tackle and be done with it.
Draft Travis Hunter and start Vidarian Lowe at tackle again.
Hey, yeah. Travis Hunter's he can play multiple positions. Maybe
play him everywhere, baby.
I'm gonna say, if they want to draft Travis Hunter, I would draft Will Johnson. I think he's a better corner, and I think Travis Hunter's a corner. Will Johnson's good. I don't know if you saw him.
No, he's nasty. USC. He read. Who'd they play again?
USC.
Oh, he read Miller Moss like a book on that. He picked 6 him, didn't he?
Yeah, he's also just bigger, and they have good corners, but like they need more size at that position.
Yeah,
and Will Johnson.
I was gonna say Travis Hunter, as great as he is, his body type. Like I haven't watched a ton of him to know if it really is. I feel like he's gonna be getting hurt in the NFL. Like maybe not serious, but I feel like soft tissue like every week. It just that's the vibe I get from him, and I'm like, I would not want to invest like a top 10 pick in someone who might not be on the field consistently.
Well, that's also why I think he's a corner, because that body type going over the middle on like he's kind of built like Tyquan Thornton. He might be a little bit bigger, but like that kind of body type for the kind of receiver he is scares me a little bit. I guess it'd be more like Xavier Worthy, but he's like that kind of guy, and you're still going to be taking hits playing corner, but you're giving the hits. You're not receiving them, so it's a little bit easier.
I don't want them to actually take him.
Sorry, my bad.
No, I was just going to say, I don't want them to actually take him. They have more needs, but he is just so good, and he's so good on both sides of the ball. It's an incredible watch. There's no complaining about anything he does as a player. But as far as the fit, and you're right, Alex, you're probably not going to be able to play him on both sides. They might try and use gadgets on him a little bit, but he's not going to be able to play every down in the league. But he is a filthy, filthy player.
Marcus Jones vibes. Marcus Jones vibes.
Yeah, that's not a bad take.
Man, I haven't even watched these guys yet. God damn.
Anybody want to talk Ted McMillan? Anybody want to talk Luther Burden? Or we've moved on.
Let's talk BC. Let's talk BC football.
BC football. Bill O'Brien's building a monster. We'll have to get back to that another time, though, because we've all had a long day. We got to wrap it. I still got more to go. I'll be on the Sports Hub at 8:20 with Joe Murray. Patriots mailbag coming tomorrow on 98.5 thesportshub.com. Taylor and Mike, you guys have a film breakdown coming tomorrow, right? Patriots Daily.
Yeah, we're going to be talking. A lot of it is going to be trying to explain to people why Van Pelt is actually showing some exciting things as a play caller. So I understand people on time.
Take a guess whose idea that one was.
But yeah,
it'll be fun. We're going to do something on the defense too. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll have it covered.
Brian, you got anything coming?
Nothing too exciting. Just Pats beat what, Thursday?
Way to convince people to check it out.
Yeah, nothing too good.
Just the usual,
You can find
Brian just out here for the vibes. He's like, you can keep the money.
You can find 3,000 words on Bryce Behringer's performance and all of Brian's other work on patspulpit.com. And we'll be back with the Patriots beat on Thursday. We'll be looking at Patriots Niners. So we'll talk to you then. Till then, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give us that thumbs up, and we'll talk to you next time.
See ya.